Maya Chen walked through the main entrance of Jefferson High School, with the same steady pace she once used crossing hostile terrain on distant worlds. At 19, she looked older than the typical senior, her dark eyes holding depths that spoke of experiences far beyond homework and prom dates. The morning sun caught the thin scar running from her left temple to her jawline, a souvenir from the Battle of Kepler 442b that she'd never bothered to have surgically removed. The hallway buzzed with the usual chaos of teenagers rushing to first period. Students clustered around lockers, sharing weekend stories and complaining about upcoming tests. Maya moved through them like a ghost, her military-issued prosthetic left arm hidden beneath a long-sleeved shirt. She'd learned to walk normally again, masking the slight limp from where shrapnel had torn through her right leg during the evacuation of the mining colony on Proxima 3. "Excuse me, are you the new student?" A cheerful voice interrupted her observations. Maya turned to see a blonde girl with a bright smile and a student council pin on her backpack. "I'm Jessica Williams, senior class president. I'm supposed to show you around." Maya nodded once. "Maya Chen." Jessica waited for more introduction, but when none came, she pressed on with practiced enthusiasm. "Great! So you're transferring from another district, right? That must be tough, starting senior year at a new school." "Something like that." The response was clipped, professional. Jessica's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Well, let's get you to the office first. Mrs. Mauer Patterson will want to meet you." As they walked, Jessica chattered about school traditions, upcoming events, and various cliques to avoid. Maya listened with half an ear, her trained senses automatically cataloging exits, potential cover positions, and the general flow of foot traffic. Old habits died hard, especially when those habits had kept her alive through 3 years of interstellar warfare against the Zephyrian Empire. The administrative office smelled of coffee and copy machine toner. Mrs. Patterson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair, looked up from her desk with a welcoming smile that immediately shifted to concern when she saw Maya's expression. "You must be Maya. Welcome to Jefferson High." She stood extending her hand. Maya shook it with her right hand, keeping her left arm positioned naturally at her side. "I have your schedule here, and I've arranged for Jessica to help you navigate your first few days." "Thank you, ma'am." Mrs. Patterson blinked at the formal address. "Oh, just Mrs. Patterson is fine, dear. Now, I see you've had some gaps in your education. The counselor will work with you to make sure you're caught up for graduation. Don't worry, many students face challenges." Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Gaps in education. 3 years fighting to preserve human colonies while her classmates worried about SAT scores could be considered a gap, she supposed. "I understand, ma'am." The first class was Advanced Placement History with Mr. Rodriguez, an energetic teacher in his 30s who clearly loved his subject. Maya took a seat in the back corner, always maintained sight lines to entrances and exits, and waited. "Today we're continuing our unit on 21st century conflicts," Mr. Rodriguez announced, pulling up a holographic display showing various Earth-based wars. "Who can tell me about the significance of asymmetric warfare in these conflicts?" Several hands shot up. Maya remained still, watching the discussion unfold. These kids talked about warfare like it was ancient history, theoretical concepts to be memorized for tests. They used terms like casualties and strategic objectives, without understanding the weight those words carried. "What about more recent conflicts?" asked Brian Mills, a tall kid with perfectly styled hair who clearly enjoyed being the center of attention. "I mean, everyone knows about the Zephyrian War, but that's like totally different from Earth wars, right? It's all space battles and laser weapons." Several students laughed. Maya's hands, hidden beneath her desk, clenched into fists. Mr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting point, Brian. The Zephyrian conflict did introduce new elements, three-dimensional battlefields, faster-than-light communication delays affecting command decisions, fighting in zero gravity or hostile atmospheres. But the human elements remained the same. I heard the Marines who fought out there were basically superhuman, said Sarah Kim, a petite girl with an impressive collection of Honor Society pins. Like, genetically enhanced or something? No way regular people could survive that stuff. Actually, Mr. Rodriguez corrected gently, while the soldiers received advanced training and equipment, they were still fundamentally human. Many were volunteers straight out of high school, actually. Some barely older than you. Maya's fingers found the small metal tag hanging on a chain beneath her shirt. Her identification disc from the 47th Colonial Defense Regiment. She'd been 17 when she enlisted, 18 when she first saw combat on the contested moon of Titan VII. Regular people, the teacher had said. Maya wondered what these kids would think if they knew one of those regular people was sitting right behind them. The bell rang, ending the discussion before it could delve deeper into topics that might require Maya to leave the room. She gathered her things and headed for the door, but Mr. Rodriguez's voice stopped her. Maya, could I speak with you for a moment? She paused, letting the other students file out. Jessica waited by the door, but Maya waved her on. I'll find my next class. When they were alone, Mr. Rodriguez approached carefully. I noticed you didn't participate in today's discussion. In my experience, quiet students often have the most interesting perspectives. Don't be afraid to share your thoughts. Maya studied his face, looking for signs of recognition or suspicion. She found only genuine encouragement. I'll keep that in mind, sir. Just Mr. Rodriguez is fine. And Maya? If you ever want to discuss any of the topics we cover in class, my door's always open. Sometimes talking through historical concepts with someone can help clarify your own understanding. She nodded and headed for the door, but his next words stopped her cold. Especially if you have personal insights into the subject matter. Maya's step faltered for just a moment. A rookie mistake that would have earned her push-ups from Sergeant Major Williams back on Kepler Station. She recovered smoothly and continued walking, but she could feel Mr. Rodriguez's thoughtful gaze following her out of the room. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of introductions, confused looks from teachers trying to place her accent and formal speech patterns, and whispered conversations from students speculating about the mysterious new girl. By lunchtime, Maya had already identified the school's informal power structure, located all major exits, and mentally noted which students might become problems. The cafeteria was a cacophony of competing conversations, scraping chairs, and the general chaos of several hundred teenagers trying to eat and socialize simultaneously. Maya purchased a simple lunch and found an empty table near the windows, good natural light, clear sight lines, multiple escape routes. She'd barely taken her first bite when Jessica appeared with a group of friends in tow. Maya, come sit with us. I want you to meet everyone. Jessica's smile was genuine, if a bit forced. Maya suspected the girl had been tasked with integration duties and took her responsibilities seriously. Reluctantly, Maya gathered her tray and followed Jessica to a table occupied by what appeared to be the academic elite of Jefferson High. Student council members, honor society officers, and debate team champions, the kind of kids who would go on to prestigious universities and successful careers, blissfully unaware of the wider universe's dangers. Everyone, this is Maya, the new senior I told you about, Jessica announced, making space at the table. Maya, this is Amanda from the debate team, Michael, who's our class valedictorian, Sarah from AP classes, and Brian you met in history. A chorus of greetings rose from the group. Maya nodded acknowledgement and began eating, hoping they'd lose interest and let her observe in peace. No such luck. So, where did you transfer from? Amanda asked, leaning forward with the aggressive curiosity of someone accustomed to getting answers. Out of state. Which state? Michael pressed. I'm applying to colleges all over the country, so I know a lot about different school systems. Maya chewed thoughtfully, buying time. I moved around a lot. Brian laughed. Military brat? My dad's Air Force, so I totally get the constant moving thing. The innocent question hit closer to home than Brian could possibly know. Maya's expression remained neutral, but her left hand unconsciously moved to cover her right wrist, where her military chronometer usually sat. She'd left it at home, along with anything else that might raise questions. Something like that. Sarah jumped into the conversation. That must have been hard, never staying in one place long enough to make real friends. At least you're here for senior year. You'll get to experience all the traditions. Homecoming, senior skip day, graduation parties. Maya tried to imagine herself at a homecoming dance, making small talk about college applications and weekend plans. The image wouldn't form. 3 years ago, while these kids were planning junior prom, she'd been planning rescue operations for civilian evacuees. While they worried about pop quizzes, she'd been calculating ammunition reserves and medical supply needs. I'm more focused on academics, she said finally. Oh, you're pre-med or something? Michael's eyes lit up with competitive interest. What's your GPA? Are you taking any AP classes? I'm hoping to get into Harvard early admission. Before Maya could formulate an appropriate response, a commotion at the next table caught everyone's attention. 3 boys who clearly fell into the troublemaker category of high school social hierarchy were harassing a younger student, a thin freshman who looked like he'd rather disappear into the floor. Come on, Marcus, just admit you cheated on the math test, one of them sneered, grabbing the kid's backpack and dumping its contents on the floor. Nobody gets a perfect score without help. Maya watched the scene unfold with professional detachment. The 3 aggressors, Derek Phillips, Jake Morrison, and Tommy Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, were classic bullies. They'd identified a target they perceived as weak and were asserting dominance through intimidation. Standard predator behavior. The freshman, Marcus Webb, scrambled to collect his scattered belongings while trying to avoid eye contact with his tormentors. A few students at nearby tables watched with uncomfortable expressions, but no one intervened. Even the cafeteria monitors seemed oblivious to the situation. Hey, Derek continued, stepping on Marcus's calculator as the boy reached for it. I'm talking to you, nerd. How'd you cheat? Maya's grip tightened on her fork. In her previous life, she would have ended this situation in approximately 30 seconds with a combination of verbal de-escalation and, if necessary, precisely applied physical intervention. But high school had different rules, different consequences. Drawing attention to herself was the last thing she needed. Jessica and her friends were still talking, debating whether they should tell someone or maybe go get a teacher. Classic civilian response. Look for authority figures to handle problems instead of taking direct action. Marcus finally gathered his belongings and tried to stand, but Jake pushed him back down into his chair. We're not done talking. That was enough. Maya stood smoothly, her movement so sudden and purposeful that conversations at nearby tables faltered. She walked over to where Marcus sat surrounded by his 3 tormentors, her approach utterly silent despite the crowded room. Problem here? Her voice was calm, conversational. Derek turned, ready with a smart remark, but something in Maya's posture made the words die in his throat. She stood with perfect balance, weight evenly distributed, hands loose at her sides. To most observers, she appeared relaxed. But Derek, despite his limited emotional intelligence, possessed enough survival instinct to recognize a predator when he met one. No problem, he said, but his voice cracked slightly. Just talking to our friend Marcus here. Maya's gaze shifted to Marcus, who looked up at her with a mixture of hope and terror. Is that right, Marcus? Just talking? Marcus glanced between Maya and Derek. clearly terrified of making the situation worse. It's okay. They were just leaving, Maya interrupted, her attention returning to Derek. She didn't raise her voice, didn't make any threatening gestures. She simply looked at him with the same expression she'd once used to evaluate enemy positions before planning an assault. Derek took a step backward. His friends followed suit, suddenly very interested in their own lunches. The confrontation lasted perhaps 15 seconds, but the message was unmistakably clear. "Yeah, whatever," Derek muttered, trying to salvage some dignity. "This is stupid anyway." The three bullies retreated to their original table, shooting occasional glances back at Maya. She helped Marcus collect the last of his scattered papers, her movements gentle but efficient. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Marcus nodded, clutching his backpack like a shield. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." The simple statement carried weight that Marcus couldn't fully understand. Maya had seen too many civilians, colonists, refugees, merchants, who'd suffered because soldiers like her hadn't been there to intervene. Sometimes you acted not because you had to, but because you could. She returned to Jessica's table to find 6 pairs of eyes staring at her with various expressions of shock and admiration. "That was amazing," Sarah whispered. "How did you do that? You didn't even touch them, but they just left." Maya sat down and resumed eating as if nothing had happened. "They weren't really committed to the confrontation." "But you could have gotten in trouble," Jessica protested. "What if they reported you for threatening them?" "I didn't threaten anyone." "Then how did you—" Brian started to ask, but the bell signaling the end of lunch period interrupted him. Maya gathered her tray and stood. "See you around." As she walked away, she could hear the excited whispers behind her. By the end of the day, the story would be all over school, probably growing in the telling. The mysterious new girl who'd faced down 3 bullies with nothing but a look. Maya's afternoon classes passed quietly. Word of the lunchroom incident had spread, and students regarded her with new interest. Teachers seemed more attentive, though whether from curiosity or concern was unclear. She answered questions when called upon, participated minimally in discussions, and maintained her careful facade of normalcy. But maintaining that facade was exhausting in ways that 12-hour combat patrols had never been. Every casual question about her background required careful editing. Every friendly overture demanded emotional energy she wasn't sure she possessed anymore. By the time the final bell rang, Maya felt drained. She was collecting books from her assigned locker when footsteps approached from behind. Maya's reflection in the small mirror inside her locker door showed Mr. Rodriguez waiting patiently a few feet away. "How was your first day?" he asked when she turned around. "Educational." He smiled at that. "I heard about lunch. Word travels fast in a place like this." Maya tensed slightly. "I didn't break any rules." "No, you didn't. In fact, you probably prevented a situation from escalating. But I'm curious, where does a high school senior learn to project that kind of authority?" The question was asked casually, but Maya recognized the probing technique. Good interrogators, and good teachers apparently, knew how to ask dangerous questions in safe ways. "I don't know what you mean." Mr. Rodriguez nodded slowly, as if her evasion had confirmed something he'd suspected. "Maya, I want you to know that this school has resources available if you need them. Counseling services, academic support, even just someone to talk to if you're dealing with adjustment issues." "I'm fine." "I'm sure you are. You strike me as someone who's learned to be fine in difficult circumstances." He paused, studying her face. "But sometimes being fine isn't the same as being okay." The observation was uncomfortably perceptive. Maya closed her locker with perhaps more force than necessary. "I should go. Bus to catch." "Of course. But Maya, that offer stands. Anytime you want to talk about history, about school, about anything, my classroom is room 237. Maya nodded and walked away, hyper-aware of his thoughtful gaze following her down the hallway. Outside, she found a bench away from the main flow of students and sat down to wait for the city bus that would take her back to her small apartment. The afternoon sun felt good on her face, and for a moment she allowed herself to simply exist without maintaining the careful facade she'd worn all day. Her left hand unconsciously moved to massage her right shoulder, where old injuries still ached when she was tired or stressed. "Maya." She looked up to see Marcus Webb approaching hesitantly. His backpack clutched protectively in front of him. "I wanted to thank you again," he said, stopping a careful distance away. "For what you did at lunch." "It's fine." "No, it's not fine. Those guys have been messing with me since freshman year, and nobody's ever—" He trailed off, searching for words. "How did you know what to do?" Maya studied the earnest face of this kid, who reminded her painfully of some of the young colonists she'd evacuated from Kepler Station. Innocent, vulnerable, depending on others for protection they couldn't provide themselves. "Sometimes people who hurt others are just looking for someone to stand up to them," she said finally. "They're not expecting real resistance." Marcus nodded as if this made perfect sense. Did you study martial arts or something?" "You moved like you knew how to fight." The question was innocent enough, but it struck too close to memories Maya wasn't ready to share. Images flashed through her mind: hand-to-hand combat training on the lunar facility, close quarters fighting in the corridors of a Zephyrian ship, the moment when she'd had to choose between her left arm and the life of her squad mate. "I should go," she said, standing abruptly as her bus approached. "Wait!" Marcus called after her, but Maya was already walking toward the bus stop. As the bus pulled away from Jefferson High, Maya stared out the window at the groups of students talking and laughing as they headed home to normal lives with normal problems. Part of her envied them their ignorance, their ability to worry about grades and social drama instead of existential threats to human civilization. But another part of her, the part that had been forged in the crucible of interstellar warfare, felt a familiar sense of purpose stirring. These kids needed protection, even if they didn't know it. The universe was vast and dangerous, full of threats they couldn't imagine. And Maya Chen, despite her battered body and scarred soul, was still a guardian. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions to deflect, new situations to navigate. But tonight, she would clean her service weapon, review the tactical manuals she'd kept from her military days, and prepare to stand watch over a group of civilians who would never know how much they needed protecting. After all, some habits died hard, and some responsibilities lasted a lifetime. The second week at Jefferson High brought unexpected complications. Maya had settled into a routine: arrive early, sit in the back of classrooms, speak only when directly questioned, and avoid drawing attention. But her carefully constructed invisibility was cracking under the weight of curious stares and persistent questions. Dr. Rebecca Sullivan, the school counselor, had been requesting meetings since Maya's enrollment. Today, the request became a requirement. "Maya, please come in and have a seat," Dr. Sullivan said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. The office was decorated with motivational posters and plants, clearly designed to appear welcoming and non-threatening. Maya recognized the psychology at work: create a comfortable environment to encourage openness. Maya sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, left arm positioned to appear natural. "You wanted to see me?" Dr. Sullivan smiled warmly, pulling out a thick folder. "I'm trying to get a better understanding of your academic background. Your transcripts show some unusual gaps. 3 years with no formal education, then suddenly you're testing at advanced levels in most subjects. That's remarkable." "I did independent study." "For 3 years? That's quite impressive. What motivated you to pursue education outside the traditional system? Maya had rehearsed answers for questions like this, but Dr. Sullivan's gentle persistence made the prepared responses feel inadequate. Family circumstances. I understand that can be difficult. Moving frequently, unstable housing situations. These challenges affect many of our students. Dr. Sullivan leaned forward slightly, her expression compassionate. Maya, I want you to know that whatever brought you here, we're committed to helping you succeed. But I'm seeing some concerning patterns. What patterns? Teachers report that you're academically capable but socially isolated. You don't participate in extracurricular activities, rarely engage in classroom discussions, and seem to avoid forming friendships. Dr. Sullivan paused, studying Maya's reaction. Additionally, there was the incident last week with the older students. Maya's jaw tightened. I broke up a fight. You intervened in a bullying situation, which was admirable, but several witnesses described your behavior as intense, unusually mature for someone your age. Dr. Sullivan opened another file. Maya, are you currently receiving any mental health services? Counseling, therapy, medication? No. Have you ever experienced traumatic events, physical abuse, violence, neglect? The questions hit like artillery rounds, each one precisely targeted at the defenses Maya had built around her past. Images flashed through her mind. The screaming of wounded soldiers in the medical bay, the moment she'd watched her best friend die from a Zephyrian plasma burst, the slow realization that her left arm would never work properly again. Everyone experiences trauma, Maya said carefully. Dr. Sullivan made a note in her file. That's very true, but some traumas require professional support to process properly. Maya, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to know that honest answers here are completely confidential. Maya waited, every muscle in her body tensed for flight or fight. Are you currently in contact with your parents or legal guardians? The question struck deeper than Dr. Sullivan could possibly know. Maya's parents had died in the Zephyrian orbital bombardment of Earth's agricultural centers during the second year of the war. She'd received notification while recovering from surgery on the medical station orbiting Titan 7. No funeral, no goodbye, just the official communication stating that Mr. and Mrs. Chen had been confirmed casualties in enemy action. My parents are deceased. Dr. Sullivan's expression shifted to one of genuine sympathy. I'm so sorry, Maya. That must be incredibly difficult. Are you currently living with other family members? Foster care? Independent living? Independent living. The term sounded clinical, sanitized. It didn't capture the reality of a 19-year-old war veteran trying to navigate civilian life while fighting recurring nightmares and phantom pain from her missing arm. At 17, that's unusual, but not impossible if you were legally emancipated. Dr. Sullivan made more notes. Maya, I'm going to recommend that we set up regular check-in meetings. Not because you're in trouble, but because transitioning to a new school, especially while managing independent living, can be overwhelming. Maya stood abruptly. May I go? I have class. Of course. But Maya? Dr. Sullivan's voice stopped her at the door. Whatever you've experienced, you don't have to carry it alone. There are people here who want to help. Maya left the counseling office feeling exposed and vulnerable. Every question had peeled away another layer of her carefully constructed identity. How long before someone started asking questions she couldn't answer? How long before someone connected the mysterious new student with the classified military records of Sergeant Maya Chen, 47th Colonial Defense Regiment? The rest of the day passed in a haze of hypervigilance. Maya found herself checking exits more frequently, analyzing potential threats in every crowded hallway, jumping slightly when the bell rang between classes. The symptoms were familiar. Combat stress reactions that she'd learned to manage during the war, but had hoped were behind her. After school, instead of heading directly to the bus stop, Maya found herself walking toward the practice fields behind the school. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grass, and the air carried the sounds of various sports teams training. Soccer players ran drills, the tennis team practiced serves, and in the distance, she could hear the rhythmic thud of footballs being kicked. Maya settled on the bleachers overlooking the soccer field, needing the open space and clear sight lines to calm her jangled nerves. She pulled out her homework, but found herself watching the players instead. Their movements were precise but entirely different from military drill, flowing, creative, focused on ball control rather than weapon handling. "Mind if I sit?" Maya looked up to see Mr. Rodriguez climbing the bleachers toward her, a stack of papers in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. "It's a public space." He smiled at the diplomatic non-answer and settled on the bench below hers, maintaining respectful distance. "I like to grade papers out here sometimes. The fresh air helps clear my head after a day of teaching American teenagers about global conflicts." Maya returned her attention to her homework, hoping he'd take the hint. Instead, he pulled out a red pen and began working through what looked like quiz papers. They sat in companionable silence for several minutes, the sounds of practice sessions creating a peaceful backdrop. Maya found her stress levels gradually decreasing. Something about Mr. Rodriguez's presence was calming rather than threatening. "You know," he said without looking up from his grading, "I had a student a few years back who reminded me of you. Super bright, very mature for her age, but she seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders." Maya's hand stilled on her physics homework. "What happened to her?" "She graduated, went to college on a full academic scholarship, but it took her a while to learn that it was okay to let people help her." Mr. Rodriguez made a note on the paper he was grading. "She'd been through some difficult experiences, family problems, I think, and she'd learned to rely only on herself. Independence is an admirable quality, but taken to extremes, it becomes isolation." The parallel wasn't subtle, but Maya appreciated that he wasn't pushing for a direct response. Some people learn early that they can't count on others. True. And sometimes those people need to learn that the right people can be counted on, even if others have let them down. He looked up from his papers, studying the soccer players. "Maya, can I ask you something? And feel free to tell me it's none of my business." Maya tensed, but nodded. "In class, when we discuss historical conflicts, you get this look. Not confusion or disinterest, more like recognition. Like you're remembering something rather than learning it for the first time." The observation was too perceptive, too close to truths Maya couldn't share. "History interests me." "I'm sure it does. But there's a difference between academic interest and personal connection." Mr. Rodriguez set down his pen and turned to face her more directly. "Maya, I've been teaching for 8 years. I've seen students dealing with divorce, abuse, poverty, loss, all kinds of trauma. And I've learned to recognize when someone has seen more of the world's darkness than they should have at their age." Maya's heart rate accelerated, but she kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you mean." "I think you do. The question is whether you're ready to talk about it with someone who might understand." Before Maya could formulate a response, shouts erupted from the soccer field below. One of the players, a girl Maya recognized from her chemistry class, was lying on the ground, clearly injured. The coach was running toward her while other players stood around looking uncertain. Maya was moving before she consciously decided to act. She vaulted over the bleacher railing and sprinted across the field, her body falling automatically into the efficient combat stride that covered ground quickly while conserving energy. She reached the injured player, Jennifer Martinez, seconds before the coach. "What happened?" Maya asked, dropping to one knee beside Jennifer. "I landed wrong coming down from a header," Jennifer gasped, clutching her left ankle. "I think it's broken." Maya's training kicked in automatically. She'd been the primary combat medic for her squad during the last year of the war, trained to assess and treat battlefield injuries under fire. A sprained ankle was nothing compared to treating plasma burns while dodging enemy artillery. "Let me see." Maya's voice carried calm authority that made Jennifer instinctively comply. She gently probed the ankle, checking for obvious deformity, testing range of motion, assessing circulation. "It's not broken, but you've got a significant sprain. We need to get ice on it and elevate it." Coach Martinez, no relation to the injured player, arrived breathing hard. "Jennifer, how bad is it?" "Should I call an ambulance?" "Sprained ankle," Maya reported, already helping Jennifer into a sitting position. "We need ice, an elastic bandage if you have one, and something to elevate her leg. The injury isn't serious, but she'll need to stay off it for a few days." The coach stared at Maya in surprise. "Are you trained in first aid?" Maya hesitated. Military combat medical training was considerably more advanced than high school first aid courses, but explaining that would raise questions she couldn't answer. "I took some classes," she said vaguely, helping Jennifer remove her cleat to examine the swelling ankle. Other players had gathered around, their earlier training forgotten in the face of their teammates' injury. Maya found herself naturally taking charge, directing two girls to get ice from the athletic building while she continued her assessment. "You're going to be fine," she told Jennifer, her voice carrying the same calm confidence she'd once used to reassure wounded soldiers. "Keep weight off it for the next few days. Ice it regularly, and see a doctor if the swelling doesn't start going down tomorrow." Jennifer nodded gratefully. "Thank you. I was so scared it was broken." "Fear is natural with injuries, but this one will heal completely if you treat it properly." Maya accepted the ice pack from one of the returning players and positioned it carefully on Jennifer's ankle. "The key is not to rush back to activity too soon." Mr. Rodriguez appeared at Maya's shoulder, having followed her down from the bleachers. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "You responded like a trained professional." Maya realized that her medical training had exposed another crack in her civilian facade. Combat medics moved with specific efficiency, used particular terminology, approached injuries with clinical detachment born from treating much more serious wounds. She'd just demonstrated skills that no ordinary high school student should possess. "I watch a lot of medical shows," she said weakly. Mr. Rodriguez's expression suggested he found that explanation about as convincing as Maya did. But before he could press further, Coach Martinez was thanking her profusely and asking if she'd ever considered joining the athletic program as a trainer. Maya helped Jennifer to her feet and supported her as they walked toward the school building. Other players clustered around, chattering excitedly about Maya's quick response and professional competence. "That was amazing," said Katie Sullivan, the team's midfielder. "Are you thinking about being a doctor? You were so calm and knew exactly what to do." "Maya's mysterious like that," added Sarah Kim, who'd apparently spread word about Maya's lunchroom intervention. "She's got all these hidden talents." Maya felt the familiar weight of scrutiny, the dangerous attention that came from standing out. In the military, exceptional performance was expected and rewarded. In high school, it raised questions she couldn't answer. By the time they reached the athletic building, a small crowd had gathered. Students who'd heard about the injury came to check on Jennifer, but Maya noticed that many of them were really there to observe her. Word was clearly spreading about the new girl who seemed to handle every crisis with unusual competence. "Maya, can I speak with you for a moment?" Mr. Rodriguez's voice cut through the chatter. She followed him a short distance away from the group, every instinct telling her this conversation would not go well. "That was remarkable medical response," he said without preamble. "Textbook assessment, perfect field treatment, appropriate prioritization of care. Where exactly did you learn those skills?" Maya met his gaze steadily, falling back on her military training in resistance to interrogation. Provide minimal information, stay consistent with previous statements, don't volunteer details that could be verified. I read about first aid, medical shows, like I said. Maya. His voice was gentle, but implacable. I've seen actual EMTs respond to emergencies. You just demonstrated that level of competence. No amount of television watching teaches someone to assess circulation and nerve function with that kind of systematic precision. The noose was tightening. Each day brought new situations that exposed the gaps between her claimed background and her actual experience. How long before someone started asking questions that couldn't be deflected? I should go, Maya said. I'll miss my bus. Maya, wait. Mr. Rodriguez stepped closer, lowering his voice. I don't know what you've been through, but I recognize someone who's seen things they shouldn't have had to see. If you need help, or just someone to talk to who won't judge, I'm available. For a moment, Maya felt the overwhelming temptation to tell him everything. The weight of maintaining her false identity was exhausting, and Mr. Rodriguez seemed genuinely caring. But the classified nature of her service record made the truth impossible to share. Even if she could trust him personally, revealing her military background could compromise ongoing operations and put other people at risk. Thank you, she said finally. But I'm fine. She walked away from the athletic building, leaving behind a group of students who were clearly talking about her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new opportunities to expose herself. The careful anonymity she'd tried to maintain was crumbling under the weight of her own competence. But as Maya waited for her bus, she realized something had shifted during the afternoon's events. For the first time since arriving at Jefferson High, she'd felt useful, helping Jennifer, taking charge of a medical emergency, providing care to someone who needed it. These actions reminded her why she'd become a soldier in the first place. Maybe hiding from her past wasn't the answer. Maybe the challenge wasn't learning to be a normal teenager, but finding ways to be true to who she was while protecting the secrets she had to keep. The war might be over, but Maya Chen was still a guardian, still someone who stepped forward when others needed protection. The question was whether Jefferson High School was ready for that reality. The emergency alarm shattered the quiet of fourth period physics. Maya looked up from her lab report as Principal Morrison's voice crackled through the intercom system, tense with barely controlled panic. Attention all students and staff. We are implementing a code red lockdown. This is not a drill. Move away from windows, barricade doors, and remain silent until further notice. Around the classroom, 28 students and Mrs. Patterson looked at each other with confusion and growing fear. Code Red meant imminent threat to life safety, active shooter, terrorist attack, or other violence requiring immediate protective action. Maya's training took over instantly. While her classmates whispered nervously and Mrs. Patterson fumbled with the classroom door lock, Maya was already assessing the tactical situation. Second floor, east wing, one entry point, large windows facing the parking lot, no secondary exits. The room could be secured, but they would be trapped if the threat reached their corridor. Everyone move away from the windows, Maya said quietly, her voice carrying absolute authority. The casual conversation stopped as students instinctively responded to her command presence. Mrs. Patterson looked up from the door. Maya, please help me move this desk to... Not yet. Maya held up one hand while using the other to activate the emergency app on her phone. The local emergency services channel crackled to life through her earpiece, a habit from her military days that had proven useful in civilian life. We need information before we commit to a defensive position. Through her earpiece, she heard the dispatcher's urgent voice. All units respond to Jefferson High School. Reports of armed individuals in building, shots fired, multiple casualties possible. Maya's blood went cold. Not a drill, not a false alarm. Real threat, real weapons, Real danger to the civilians she'd spent 3 weeks learning to care about. Armed individuals in the building, she announced quietly. Multiple threats, location unknown. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Sarah Kim started crying. Marcus Webb, who'd been sitting near the windows, scrambled toward the back of the room. Mrs. Patterson's hands shook as she tried to turn the deadbolt. "How do you know that?" demanded Brian Mills, his usual arrogance replaced by barely controlled fear. Maya ignored the question. She moved to the windows and carefully peered through the blinds at the parking lot below. 3 police cars were already arriving, officers taking cover positions behind their vehicles. Good response time, but they'd be coordinating a perimeter while figuring out the internal situation. That would take time. Time the people in this classroom might not have. A new voice came through her earpiece, a police tactical commander coordinating the response. Suspects reported in the main hallway, East Wing. Multiple weapons, unknown number of subjects. School's resource officer is down. Repeat, SRO is down. Maya closed her eyes briefly. Officer Jenkins, the friendly school security guard who'd helped her find her first class, was injured or dead. The threat was real, immediate, and already inside their defensive perimeter. "Maya, what's happening?" Jessica Williams had moved close to her, seeking the calm confidence Maya projected even in crisis. "We need to secure this room and wait for law enforcement," Maya said, her mind racing through tactical options. "Help me move these desks." But even as she organized the impromptu barricade, Maya knew the truth. Classroom lockdowns were designed to contain and isolate threats, buying time for professional responders. But if the attackers were already in the East Wing, they had minutes at most before this room was discovered. And high school desks wouldn't stop determined gunmen. Through her earpiece, "Shots fired, 2nd floor, East Wing, multiple rounds, ongoing engagement." That settled it. The threat was moving toward them, and passive defense wouldn't be enough. Maya made the decision that would shatter her carefully constructed civilian identity forever. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to call 911 and tell them there are 30 people in room 237. We're secure for now. But we'll need immediate evacuation assistance." Maya's voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to giving orders in life-and-death situations. "Maya, what are you—" "Everyone listen carefully." Maya turned to face the class, her demeanor completely changed from the quiet, withdrawn student they thought they knew. "The threat is moving toward this corridor. Our defensive position is compromised. I'm going to scout the hallway and establish an alternate escape route." "You can't go out there," Sarah gasped. "They have guns." "Yes, they do." Maya checked her phone for the building schematics she'd memorized during her first week. "Which is why we need someone with tactical training to assess the situation." The room fell silent, except for the sound of sirens growing louder outside. 28 pairs of eyes stared at Maya as the implications of her words sank in. Mr. Rodriguez spoke first. "Maya, what kind of tactical training?" She met his gaze steadily, no longer bothering with evasions or half-truths. "The kind that kept me alive for 3 years fighting the Zephyrian Empire." The silence stretched longer. Marcus Webb's mouth fell open. Jessica stepped backward involuntarily. Even Mrs. Patterson stopped her nervous fumbling with the door lock. "You're a veteran," Mr. Rodriguez said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Sergeant Maya Chen, 47th Colonial Defense Regiment, combat medic, squad leader, 3 years active service." Maya moved toward the door, every muscle in her body tense with controlled aggression. "I've been in situations like this before, and I know how to get you out safely." Brian Mills found his voice first. "But you're our age. How could you—" "I enlisted at 17. I fought in space battles while you were worried about homecoming dates." Maya's attention was already shifting to the tactical situation, but she threw one more look back at the classroom. Right now, that experience is the only thing that might keep you alive. Through her earpiece. Suspect movement confirmed, second floor east wing, approaching classrooms. All units prepare for engagement. Time was running out. Maya opened the door carefully, using the small window to scan the corridor beyond. Empty, but she could hear voices and footsteps coming from the main hallway intersection. Two male voices, confident and aggressive. The attackers were searching room by room. She closed the door and turned back to the class. Here's the situation. Two armed subjects approximately 100 meters from this position, moving systematically through classrooms. Law enforcement is setting up outside, but they won't breach until they have better intelligence. That gives us maybe 5 minutes before those men reach this room. What do we do? Mrs. Patterson's voice was barely a whisper. Maya pointed toward the large windows. Fire escape is 30 meters down the corridor to the left. If we can reach it, we can evacuate everyone to the parking lot where police can provide protection. But we'll be exposed in the hallway, Mr. Rodriguez pointed out. Yes, which is why I'm going to neutralize the threat first. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Maya had just announced her intention to engage armed attackers with her bare hands. Maya, no, Jessica said, tears streaming down her face. You can't fight people with guns. You'll be killed. Maya's expression softened slightly. These kids had no concept of what trained soldiers could do, what kind of damage a combat veteran could inflict when the lives of innocents were at stake. They thought in terms of movies and video games, not the brutal reality of close-quarters combat. I appreciate your concern, Maya said gently, but I've neutralized armed opponents before, multiple times. Through her earpiece, shots fired, room 241, officer down, suspect is mobile, armed with automatic weapons. Room 241 was 3 doors down from their position. Maya made her final tactical assessment. 2 attackers, automatic weapons, moving methodically through the corridor. They would reach room 237 within 2 minutes. The window escape route was viable, but only if the hallway was clear. And right now, the hallway was a kill zone. She looked around the classroom one final time, at Jessica's terrified face, at Marcus clutching his backpack like a shield, at Mr. Rodriguez watching her with something between amazement and horror. These people had become more than civilians to protect. They were her responsibility, her mission, her reason for breaking cover. Mrs. Patterson, when I give the signal, take everyone to the fire escape, move fast, stay low, don't look back. Maya opened the door again, studying the corridor layout. Mr. Rodriguez, I need you to coordinate the evacuation. Get them to the parking lot and identify yourselves to law enforcement immediately. Maya, Mr. Rodriguez said quietly, if you don't make it, I will. Her voice carried absolute conviction. I've never lost a civilian under my protection, and I'm not starting today. Maya stepped into the corridor, moving with the fluid silence of someone trained to hunt predators in zero gravity. The familiar weight of combat settled over her like an old jacket. Heightened senses, tactical awareness, the deadly calm that came when protecting others required violence. She could hear the attackers clearly now, 2 men arguing about which rooms to check next. Their voices carried the casual cruelty of people who enjoyed causing terror, but also a lack of professional discipline that Maya could exploit. Moving down the hallway, Maya felt her civilian mask finally slip away completely. No more pretending to be a normal teenager, no more hiding the scars that defined her. She was what she'd always been, a guardian, a protector, a soldier who stepped forward when others needed salvation. The first attacker came around the corner 30 seconds later, weapon lowered as he checked room numbers. Maya was waiting. The engagement lasted approximately 15 seconds. The man's automatic rifle clattered to the floor while he gasped for breath through a crushed windpipe. Maya had his weapon secured and was moving toward the second attacker before the first one finished falling unconscious. The second man was more alert, possibly military-trained himself. He spun toward the sound of his partner's collapse, weapon rising, but Maya was already inside his decision loop, moving faster than civilian reflexes could track. The confrontation was brief and decisive. Two armed attackers, neutralized with minimal noise, weapons secured, immediate threat eliminated. Maya checked both men for additional weapons and restraints, then activated her phone's emergency function to contact police directly. This is Maya Chen in the East Wing, second floor. Two suspects neutralized, weapons secured. Initiate evacuation protocol for room 237. 30 civilians ready for extraction. The police tactical commander's voice crackled through her earpiece. Identify yourself. Are you law enforcement? Negative. Military veteran. Rendered aid to civilians under attack. A pause. Military veteran? Ma'am, I need you to... Sergeant Maya Chen, 47th Colonial Defense Regiment, service number 7749 Delta Alpha 1. I have 30 civilians requiring immediate evacuation and 2 suspects requiring medical attention. Another pause, longer this time. When the voice returned, it carried new respect. Roger that, Sergeant Chen. Stand by for extraction team. Maya returned to room 237 to find 28 faces staring at her with expressions ranging from shock to awe. She was breathing normally, her clothes slightly rumpled but unmarked by blood, her expression calm and professional. Threat neutralized, she reported simply. Police extraction team inbound. Everyone ready to move? Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward, studying her face with new understanding. The way you moved, the way you handled the situation, that wasn't just basic military training. Maya met his gaze steadily. No, it wasn't. Special forces? Combat veteran, multiple campaigns, specialized in civilian protection and evacuation. Maya moved toward the windows, checking the police positions below. The details are classified, but yes, I've done this before. Jessica found her voice, still shaky but filled with wonder. You saved us. You actually saved all of us. I did my job. But you're our age, Brian protested, though his earlier arrogance had been replaced by genuine confusion. How is it possible that you've seen combat? Maya turned from the window, and for the first time since enrolling at Jefferson High, she answered a personal question with complete honesty. Because while you were studying for SATs and worrying about prom dates, I was fighting to preserve human civilization against an alien empire that wanted to wipe our species from existence. Her voice carried no judgment, just simple fact. Some people grow up faster than others. The police tactical team arrived 10 minutes later, finding 2 unconscious suspects securely restrained and 30 unharmed civilians ready for evacuation. The team leader, a grizzled veteran named Captain Morrison, took one look at Maya's handiwork and requested her military identification. Sergeant Chen, he said after reviewing her service record on his tactical tablet, this was exceptional work. Textbook neutralization. No collateral damage. Perfect preservation of evidence. Thank you, sir. The FBI will want to debrief you, but unofficially, where did you learn close-quarters combat like that? Maya glanced back at her classmates, who were being escorted toward the fire escape by other officers. Titan 7 Moonbase, Advanced Combat Training Facility. 3 months of specialized instruction in shipboarding and station clearing operations. Captain Morrison nodded slowly. I heard about Titan 7. Brutal fighting. Yes, sir. It was. The evacuation proceeded smoothly after that. Maya was separated from the other students for debriefing, but not before Jessica grabbed her arm in the parking lot. Maya, I don't understand everything that happened today, but I know you risked your life for us. Jessica's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you. Maya nodded, uncomfortable with gratitude, but touched by the genuine emotion in Jessica's voice. "Take care of yourself. And look out for Marcus. He's going to have nightmares about this." The debriefing took 3 hours. FBI agents, local police, school administrators, and eventually a representative from Colonial Defense Command who verified Maya's service record and clearance status. By the time she was released, the school parking lot had emptied except for a few media vehicles and cleanup crews. Mr. Rodriguez was waiting by the main entrance, grading papers on a bench in the late afternoon sun. "I thought you'd gone home," Maya said, approaching cautiously. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." He set down his red pen and looked at her with new eyes. "The FBI agent I spoke with said you've been awarded multiple commendations for valor. Bronze Star, Silver Star, Purple Heart." Maya's hand unconsciously moved to cover her left arm. "I did my duty." "Maya, you were 17 when you enlisted, 18 when you first saw combat." Mr. Rodriguez's voice carried a mix of admiration and sadness. "Most of my students can't handle the responsibility of a part-time job. Different circumstances require different responses." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the cleanup crews remove police tape from the school entrances. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez spoke again. "What happens now? I assume your cover identity is blown." Maya had been wondering the same thing. Her carefully constructed civilian life had evaporated the moment she'd revealed her true capabilities. Colonial Defense Command would need to relocate her, create a new identity, find a different place for her to complete her education and transition to civilian life. "I don't know," she admitted. "This was supposed to be my chance to experience normal life, figure out who I am when I'm not a soldier." "And what did you discover?" Maya considered the question seriously. Over the past 3 weeks, she'd learned about teenage social dynamics, experienced the challenge of academic subjects that had nothing to do with warfare, and tried to understand what normal people worried about when their survival wasn't constantly threatened. But when crisis had struck, she'd reverted to type immediately. No hesitation, no internal conflict about revealing her true nature. She was a protector, a guardian, someone who stepped forward when others needed salvation. "I discovered that you can take the soldier out of the war," Maya said finally. "But you can't take the war out of the soldier." Mr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. "That doesn't have to be a limitation, Maya. The world needs guardians. People willing to stand between civilians and danger. Maybe your challenge isn't learning to be normal. Maybe it's learning how to be exceptional in peacetime." The observation struck home. Maya had been so focused on hiding her capabilities, on blending in with people who'd never faced existential threats, that she'd forgotten the positive aspects of her training and experience. She knew how to lead in crisis, how to remain calm under pressure, how to make life-and-death decisions with limited information. "The principal wants to meet with me tomorrow," Maya said, "assuming I'm not relocated by then. Dr. Matthews is a good man, former Army himself, actually. I think you might be surprised by his perspective." Maya stood, shouldering her backpack. "I should go. My case officer is probably wondering why a simple high school integration assignment turned into a federal incident." "Maya," Mr. Rodriguez's voice stopped her. "For what it's worth, I think Jefferson High is lucky to have you, even if it's just for a few more weeks." The next morning brought surprises. Maya arrived at school expecting to find her locker cleared out and transfer papers waiting in the administrative office. Instead, she found Principal Matthews waiting in the main hallway with a warm smile and a cup of coffee. "Sergeant Chen, or do you prefer Maya?" "Maya is fine, sir." "Walk with me, Maya. I think we need to discuss your future here at Jefferson High." They strolled through hallways that yesterday had been a battlefield, but today buzzed with normal teenage activity. Students clustered around lockers, complained about homework, and gossiped about weekend plans. But Maya noticed the difference in how they looked at her. No longer curious confusion, but respectful recognition. "I spoke with your case officer this morning," Principal Matthews said as they reached his office. "Colonel Harrison, I believe?" Maya nodded, surprised. Most civilians never got past the automated phone systems when trying to reach Colonial Defense Command. "We had an interesting conversation about your educational goals and the unique challenges facing young veterans transitioning to civilian life." Principal Matthews gestured for Maya to take a seat. "It seems there are more people in your situation than I realized." "Sir?" "Veterans who enlisted young, served with distinction, but missed traditional educational experiences. The military does excellent job training soldiers, but sometimes struggles with the reverse process, helping warriors become civilians." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not sure I understand." "Maya, what happened yesterday was remarkable. You saved 30 lives with courage, skill, and tactical expertise that would impress professional law enforcement." Principal Matthews leaned forward. "But what impressed me most was how you handled the aftermath. You could have been arrogant, demanding recognition or special treatment. Instead, you were modest, professional, and concerned primarily with the welfare of others." "I was doing my job." "Exactly. Which brings me to my proposal." Principal Matthews opened a folder on his desk. "What if staying at Jefferson High was still doing your job?" Maya frowned, not following his logic. "We've never had a security incident like yesterday, but in today's world, such threats are increasingly common. Schools need people who can respond effectively to crisis situations." Principal Matthews pulled out an official-looking document. "I'm offering you a position as student security aide, working with our resource officer and emergency response team. You'd complete your education while gaining experience in civilian protection and crisis management." Maya stared at the paper, hardly believing what she was hearing. "You want me to stay?" "Maya, most of our students have never faced real adversity. They know about global conflicts from textbooks and news reports, but they've never had to make life-and-death decisions or sacrifice personal comfort for others' welfare." Principal Matthews smiled. "You could teach them things no textbook can cover: real leadership, genuine courage, what it means to serve something larger than yourself." The offer was tempting, but Maya had learned to be suspicious of solutions that seemed too good to be true. "What about my background? The classified elements of my service record?" "Colonel Harrison and I worked out the details. Your general service will be acknowledged, but operational specifics remain classified. As far as the school community knows, you're a young veteran completing your education while contributing to campus security." Maya looked through the office windows at students passing in the hallway. Jessica Williams waved when she saw Maya, her smile bright and genuine. Marcus Webb gave her a thumbs up from across the corridor. Even Brian Mills nodded respectfully, his arrogance replaced by something approaching admiration. "There's one more thing," Principal Matthews said. "Mr. Rodriguez suggested that you might be interested in helping with a new course we're developing, Contemporary Global Studies. Real-world conflict analysis, crisis leadership, the kinds of skills that textbooks can't teach." The pieces clicked into place, not hiding her experience, but channeling it constructively. Not pretending to be normal, but finding ways to be exceptional that helped rather than isolated her. "I'd like to think about it," Maya said finally. "Of course. But Maya?" Principal Matthews stood as she prepared to leave. "Whatever you decide, know that Jefferson High is proud to have you as a student. What you did yesterday embodied the best of human courage and selflessness." Maya left the principal's office with a strange feeling in her chest, something she hadn't experienced since before the war began. Hope. Not the grim determination that had carried her through combat, but genuine optimism about the future. She found Mr. Rodriguez in his classroom, preparing for first period. "So," he said without looking up from his lesson plans, "are you staying or transferring to another cover identity. Maya settled into a desk near his. Not the back corner where she'd hidden for 3 weeks, but close enough to participate in discussions. Staying. It seems Jefferson High needs a security aide. Mr. Rodriguez smiled. And maybe a guest lecturer for advanced history courses? Maybe. Maya pulled out her homework. The normal academic work that yesterday had seemed pointless, but today felt like preparation for something important. Mr. Rodriguez? Thank you. For what? For seeing who I was before I was ready to admit it myself. The bell rang, and students began filing into the classroom. Jessica sat beside Maya, chattering excitedly about the previous day's events and how totally awesome it was that Maya was staying. Marcus took the seat on her other side, no longer the scared kid who'd been bullied at lunch, but someone who'd seen real courage in action. As Mr. Rodriguez began the day's lesson on contemporary conflict resolution, Maya realized she'd finally found her answer to the question of who she was when she wasn't actively soldiering. She was still a guardian, still someone who stepped forward when others needed protection. But now she was also a teacher, a leader, a bridge between the civilian world and the harsh realities of a dangerous universe. Maya Chen had come to Jefferson High School to learn how to be normal. Instead, she'd learned how to be extraordinary in service to others, which, as it turned out, was exactly what both she and the world needed.